Welcome back, y'all. So in this video, we are going to be hooking up the view controller layout to the view controller code, and we'll keep this video a little bit short. We're just going to connect these items together, and then in the following lesson, we're actually going to write the actual logic to kind of finalize and wrap up this module. So for this one, though, let's just go ahead and connect that stuff together. So let's go back to Xcode here. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. This window's a little bit big. And to kick this video off, let's go ahead and click this little button right here at the top that says View Controller, and click on this little icon right here to look at the Identity Inspector. And in the Identity Inspector, we can see some properties relating to the identity of this view controller. And the first one that we see here at the top is the class. So we can pick what class we want to connect this view controller layout to. So by default, when you create a new Xcode project, it's going to automatically create a view controller layout for you, and then it's going to create a class called view controller, and it's going to go ahead and connect these two together. If we wanted to create another view controller, though, for example, like I showed you in a couple videos ago, we could drag another view controller layout onto the screen, and then over here we could create another, I don't know, maybe like login viewcontroller.swift. If we needed to log into this application, we could create another class and connect it, and we would do that right here. So anyways, I just wanted to show you where this is at. You don't actually need to do anything. These are already connected, which is pretty cool. So they're like I said, the layout and the class are already connected. So to actually work with these two things, we need to click on this little icon right here, and we're going to click Assistant. And the Assistant layout is going to allow us to look at the layout on the left and look at the code on the right. This is a super handy tool that we're going to use pretty often. I'm going to go ahead and hide this little pane over here on the right so we got a little bit more room. Okay, so to actually be able to edit the contents of the label up here on the screen, we need to connect this label into our view controller class. And the way that we do that is we're going to hold the control key on our keyboard, and we're going to left click on the label, and we're going to drag, and you're going to see this little blue line pop up. And once we drag it into this class here, you'll see another little blue line pop up in code, which is basically representing where this is going to go. So then if we let go of the mouse and we can let go of the control key, now right here we can type what we want to call this label. So we're just going to call this label. We're going to make it real simple. And I'm going to press the Enter key, and that's going to create a variable inside the class that represents this label. So you can see here we've got this thing that says IBOutlet. An IBOutlet basically is just a connection between the view controller layout and our code. But at the end of the day, a label is just a variable, like we've talked about before. And also a label is just another class. So it's going to have properties, it's going to have functions, it's going to have all the stuff that we're used to it having. But at the end of the day, it's still just a variable. So inside this viewDidLoad function here, we're not going to worry about this too much in this application, but basically this function gets called automatically no matter what, every time the view controller loads for the first time. We're not actually going to write any logic here for this particular application, but I just want you to show you what's going on here. So if we start typing label dot, you could see that there's all sorts of properties associated with the UI label. So if I start typing like label.text, for example, you could see that I've got access to all of the properties that relate to this label's that relate to this label. So if I were to say like label.text equals hello Cole, and we run the application, as soon as the view loads, it's going to automatically change it to hello Cole, even though it says hello world by default. So then if I were to remove this line of code here and run the application again, now there's nothing setting it to hello Cole, so it's just going to say hello world because that's what it says in the view controller. So I just kind of want to show you that's what it looks like to connect a label or any UI element into your class, your view controller class. So let's go ahead and connect the other stuff so we can wrap up this video and actually start writing some logic. So the next thing that we need to connect is the text field. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold the control key. We're going to left click, drag into the class, and we're just going to call this text field. And we're going to connect it. So now we've got a label, we've got a text field, and then lastly we need the button. But Here's the one thing that's going to be a little bit different. We can connect the button the same way that we did these, but that's not really going to help us in this particular example. We don't need to add the button as a variable because we don't need to access any of its properties. All that we need to know about the button is when it was clicked. So instead of an IBOutlet, that's actually called an IBAction. And so we'll see what that looks like. If I click, and we're going to do the same thing, we're going to control, click, and drag. And you can see that we've got this little thing up here that says connection. And by default for a button, it's going to say action. But we could make an outlet or we could make an action. But in this case, we need an action. So we want to know, if we go down here a little bit, we want to know, here's all the things that we can tap into. But specifically for us, we want to know when the user touches up inside the button. And basically what that means is that they tapped down on the button, and then once they let go, that's going to call this code. If we wanted to, for example, do like a touch down, that's a little bit different than a touch up inside. A touch down is the moment that they actually land their finger on the button. But that's not really normal. That's not like there may be places where you need to do that, but that's not the normal thing to do. A normal button click is a touch up inside. Once they've touched and let go, then we're going to do some logic. So we'll put that there. And then we got to name this action. So I usually name mine like this. I'm going to say on submit button tap, and I'm going to press enter to connect it. And so now you see it says IBAction here. And again, this is just a connection to the layout, and the layout's going to notify our class when the submit button has been tapped, and we can do whatever we want here. So this is where we're going to write some code. So now we've got everything hooked up. This is all that we're going to need to do. In the next video, we're going to actually write some logic and get this application wrapped up. So I'll see you then.